Welcome to Still Plays Galaxy Heroes. We're back with what I hope is a small talk video, but this might get a little bit longer than I'm planning. I first brought this up in the TIE Dagger kit reveal video, but I think this is a topic deserving of its own, and we're going to break it down per the on-screen list over here. We're going to cover what I think is the near-term counter to the Leviathan, Holdo's Raddus. It looks to be in the most favorable position to beat the Leviathan, and you should be prepping yours if it's not ready, because I think it's always important to work ahead and go to where the ball is going and not always playing catch up, especially for players who don't have Ray, because skipping the Raddus is far too common, fairly understandable, but what I've always advocated is finishing everything, working on everything. Finish your farms, stage your characters at gear 11. This kind of advanced prep work allows your roster to be maximally ready for shifts in the game, and it's fairly affordable to accomplish, and we're about to see a big change with the Leviathan. Because these are the types of opportunities where we can get a little bit ahead of the game, and you can get a little bit ahead of your opponents instead of getting stuck in that perpetual catch-up cycle. It also means you can create a little bit of opportunity here where you can capitalize on an advantage if you're ready before the majority of the rest of the player base who aren't thinking a little bit ahead. And if you're a newer player with a younger account where you don't think this kind of video is as relevant to you at this current moment, you should still be starting your farms on all capital ships as early as possible. That means getting all those prerequisites early, because these are long farms. They take a long time, especially if you're not doing refreshes. You want to start that clock as early as possible. And the early game is the best time to finish your farms. If you put off your farms later in favor of gear, what you're going to find is later on your gearing is going to be constantly interrupted by going after those farms, and then you get stuck in that catch-up cycle that I'm talking about, where you're always shifting around and never feeling like you can get anything done, get things out of the way when there are fewer consequences. So again, while we all work on the Leviathan prerequisites, this is a good time also to just make sure you stage the Resistance fleet. And because of my approach to the game, this is the minimum level that all my factions look like. I take everybody up to gear 11 because that's cheap and quick to do, all the cheaper and quicker to do now with the changes to the raid, but that means all these pilots are in this position. They've been like this for years. And now what I'm going to do, because of the changes to the raid, is all of these pilots I'm going to bring up to gear 12. That's the new affordable floor for me. And once we can get some in-game testing, and if my theory proves out, then I'll take a look at specific relics. So that brings us to the Leviathan so that we can understand what won't work. With the Sith Fleet, here are the major functions and themes that we know of currently without having any insight on what the Leviathan itself will bring. The Sith Fleet is going to counter fleets that attack, period. Not just attacks out of turn, that functionality that is brought in by the Dagger, but the kit functionality of the Bomber, Dagger, and Mark 6 Interceptor all have pieces that hurt attacking in general. And it is going to increase in threat over time with the crits and stacking crit damage, the stacking effects of Vengeance and Devouring Swarm bringing the threat of Annihilate. And it is going to spread any debuffs it inflicts on its opponent like wildfire. That covers the overall themes of what is going on with the Sith Fleet and how it's functioning as a counter to the majority of those existing fleets. Here are the major mechanics of each of the major ships. That covers the overarching themes for how the Sith Fleet functions, but here are the major mechanics for why Holdo is going to be the only viable counter that I am seeing currently. We'll start with the TIE Dagger because it's the glue of the Sith Fleet and has some of the foundational reasons for this theory. And the major component here is the unique ability that affects Vengeance. Most players have keyed into the fact that it's going to punish enemies that attack out of turn, but I think the second portion here is getting overlooked. Whenever another Sith ally is inflicted with a debuff, it's also going to gain a stack of Vengeance. A lot of fleets inflict a lot of debuffs. They are going to be causing a lot of stacks of vengeance whenever they're attacking. Now there's another aspect here on the crew ability. Whenever another ally attacks an enemy with a concussion mine, the tie dagger is going to be assisting, and that's going to have a bunch of effects that tie into its basic ability where it's getting that stacking crit damage. This is how it's going to increase in threat over time. Its offense and crit damage is going to become a major threat as the battle extends, and the more that you attack it. It is going to punish you for attacking this fleet. And that ties into the B-28 Extinction class bomber because of its basic ability here that grants itself defense up. That means the Mark 6 Interceptor is going to place retribution onto this fleet, and as you attack it, because it's a taunting tank, it's going to counter, give itself defense up, driving those stacks of Devouring Swarm so that the Mark 6 can utilize its Annihilate ability. But it's not going to just do that because of its unique ability. Whenever you attack a Sith ally and they take damage or they evade an attack, then it's also going to be spreading concussion mines. And as that concussion mine spread happens, then when the Sith fleet attacks you, the tie dagger is going to assist, driving up its stacks of stacking crit damage from its basic ability and stacking offense from its unique. So because of all those mechanics, that means the Profundity, Executor, Malevolence, to a lesser extent the Negotiator, and also the Raven's Claw Home 1, they are all going to be eliminated as counters because they attack out of turn. The Executor, Malevolence, Chimera, Executrix, and to a lesser extent the Finalizer, they are all going to be eliminated because they inflict debuffs. Negotiator also inflicts some debuffs. Now with some of these fleets you may be able to adjust your play a little bit to counteract some of that, but they're all going to be hurt. And then several of these fleets like the Malevolence, Negotiator, Chimera, Executrix, even the Finalizer, they all take a little bit longer to win their matches, and any fleet that takes a long amount of time, they are going to be under threat from the Annihilate ability and all of that boosted stacking damage because they have been forced to attack. What that leaves and what remains then is Holdo's Raddus. And this is why I'm convinced that Holdo's Raddus is going to be the near-term, possibly soft counter to the Leviathan. It may very well be unreliable or RNG dependent, but I do think this will be the best available counter upon the Leviathan's release that will either be boosted or replaced by additional ships. Now, with the Resistance fleet, there are minimal attacks out of turn. Only the MG100 has an ability that will call assist, and this ability can just be avoided or timed strategically. This fleet also has minimal attacks, period. Raise Falcon, Resistance X-Wing, Pose X-Wing, and the Raddus itself all have non-attack specials, so they will be able to take their turns, reduce cooldowns on Holdo's ultimate, all without boosting and strengthening the Leviathan and the Sith fleet. Rey has Thrust Reversal here, Poe with BB-8's ability. The Resistance X-Wing's Disarray ability, this is a buff dispel that also dazes. That daze is also going to help counteract that retribution because if it is reapplied, it is then going to be dazed, which will minimize the effects of it. And if you're in a position where you're stuck on cooldown on Disarray, you can always use the Resistance Trooper ability here, Begin Drop Sequence. This is an attack ability, but it does have a dispel that can come in handy, and that it will at least minimize the effects of retribution. The MG100 though is also going to bring another aspect here with its unique ability. It's the crit hit immunity aspects of the Resistance fleet. The Star Fortress is going to begin the battle immune to critical hits, which will minimize some of the effects of Vengeance and delay the dagger from getting those extra turns. And that critical hit immunity aspect of this fleet is going to be further boosted by Holdo's crew ability here, which is going to give crit hit immunity to everyone for 2 turns at the start of the battle. And what all that leads to, with all those special abilities that you can utilize without actually performing an attack, is building up to the Holdo maneuver, which will be the win condition, and this is going to be the best capital ship that is going to have an opportunity to get to its ultimate when approaching the Leviathan. So as we move into this next phase of the game, prepare for the Leviathan. Get that ship as quickly as you can, but it's also going to be important to make sure that you have its counter, and this is going to be my best bet for it. Now we're going to wrap up with our free-to-play gearing because I would like to get caught up with these. This is my gearing from May 8th. This is the start of the impacts from the Crate Dragon raid. Now right off the bat, you can see I have advanced the farming on Zori Bliss and Tusken Chieftain. Zori is finished, Zori and Chieftain is close to finish. Now I really advocate that all players should go after these single shard farm characters as quickly as they can. You can just see throughout the game how conquest, raids, everything is boosting the value of marquee characters. Cal Kestis events, everything. CG really gives you benefits to having access to these characters early, and when you put them off, it means you're locking yourself outside of a few of them. Cal Kestis here, this may have been soon after he became farmable. Yeah, so this was after, May the 4th. So I took it easy on getting his shards during the double drop events, going for signal data instead. This is after Saw Gerrera was added to the game, so I'd take him to gear 11 because this is my move. First thing I do is take him to this staging ground, and from there we can make some decisions. Saw Gerrera, though, unfortunately, at least without his Omicron, not finding a lot of viability here for him as a low gear, low star character, not like we did with Seer Junda, a little bit with Tarful. The Tuskens worked great at low stars. Cal Kestis worked great at low stars. Marin works great as low stars. There's been a lot of really solid low star viable characters. Saw Gerrera, though, does not make that list. Now we're also adding Bodhi here. Bodhi has a little bit of synergy with Saw Gerrera that I found interesting that I wanted to go for. It's because there's a little bit of offense up synergy here. But so far in my testing, untapped potential. It may not prove itself out. I may need to put the Zeta on though. Forget. Now here you can see the progress on these characters, but the main thing here is the raid. This is this is the first impact of the raid resources. So I'm taking the Jawas all up to gear 12. This is the part of the benefits of staging my roster at gear 11. All these characters were ready to go, and it's relatively affordable for me to take them to that next level. So I'm just in mass taking all my Jawas up to gear 12 now that the game has given us a reason to benefit from those kinds of choices. Going to do the same thing here with the Old Republic. I want to get access to that level 1 modifier. Now that Basilishan's required for the Leviathan, she's going to get boosted further too. These are no longer the squads that I'm using. This is just the first week squads that I tested out in access. Now I'm just doing Old Republic Jedi. Embo here is doing double duty. It's for the raid, but it's also for Grand Arena and just having him for a Java squad. But it also boosts, it makes me a little bit closer to Lord Vader. Lord Vader, I've been really happy with just how you kind of work on him by accident. Armor, same deal here, just getting her a little bit closer. In the next video, you'll see me take these characters up to relics. But just trying to be a little judicious with some of these resources, because I am also going after Galactic Legend, because it's pretty clear from this 5v5 season that my roster is no longer going to be sufficient on defense at 3 GLs. In 5v5 at least. In 3v3, I do think my roster can hold its own. It did last season. I expect that to remain true, but I just can't field enough teams in 5v5, so it's become necessary for me to add that next one. Even though I like to do low GL counters to do these large GL teams. I find it a fun challenge and good content for the channel. So that wraps up this video, but it is June, so that means we are at the 6th month mark where we usually do our single shard farm list video, which I did skip this past January, but we do it on a 6-month cycle, so I do think I will return to that series, or that would be my expectation. But there's a number of other videos that I want to be getting out soon, so look out for those. Thank you everyone. Be excellent to each other. This is Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes.